The most common concern people have when using generative AI is that it produces unintended results, sometimes modify your code, don't follow convention, or even break your functionality. So cursor rules are here to answer all of those problems and provide you with a solution in order to address them. So in this video, I'm going to cover some of those points. And we're going to talk about the trifecta of AI generative code, which is style, scope, and standard. Because if your AI don't know what style you want, what scope you want to cover, and what's the standard it needs to follow, then it won't really know how to deliver the right result for you. So your AI is literally screaming, "Don't make me guess." So in this video, we're going to cover why AI sometimes goes off script when you give it instruction and what it needs to do, how to use rules like cursor rules, also windsurf rules or any of the sort, some of the common mistakes that people make when using rules, and some of the best practice that you can use in order to get the intended outcome. So AI without rules is like a RONIN. So if you don't know, samurai serve their master with unwavering dedication, and a RONIN is a samurai without a master. An AI IDE is like a samurai. Without rules, it becomes a RONIN, generating code aimlessly and introducing chaos into your code base. But with rules, it serves its master with precision, producing disciplined and consistent code that align with the developer intent. So if you want your AI to do what you want to make sure to have very clear rules. And this way you'll have the samurai that you hope to have and not deal with this running coder. So to get the samurai coder, I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that by using cursor rules. What happens when your AI goes off script? You get inconsistent code style, you get unintended code modification, and oftentimes you will overlook the best practice. So the rules will help you not only maintaining code consistency, but also enhancing code quality, preventing unintended changes, addressing security concern, and aligning with project requirement. Because when it's generating the code, if it's not aware about some of the edge case that you want to cover, it might not handle some of the security risks or concern that you want to make sure to prevent. And that also applies to performances. You can use rules in order to make sure that the generated code follows certain performances best practice. There are two types of rules that you can use in Cursor, and I think that apply to most AI IDE like Windsurf. So you can, for example, use global rules that are for enforcing consistent coding style or preferences globally across your code base, across all your projects, and you can edit it directly from the Cursor setting interface, which is accessible right here. So if you head over to Cursor, you go on settings and you click on Cursor settings, you're going to see that right here. And these are actually your global rules. And you also have .cursorrules, which is a file that you can add inside of your project for defining guidelines unique to your particular projects. And these rules only apply to the scope of that repository. So these two rules, the global rule and the cursor rules, have two completely different scopes. The global rule has an all project scope, and the cursor rules as a current scope. And just to show you, if you head over to my project right now, if I head over here and I click on cursor rules, you'll see that those rules here will only be applied to this application here. It won't be applied to any of my other projects. And those are the .cursor rules that you have to add inside of your project. To write cursor rules is pretty much simple. All you have to do is use plain English and just write what rules you want the AI to follow. In this example, for example, I wanted the AI to not replace my AI model by other AI model. I have noticed that it has a tendency to do so when it's not aware that there's new AI model available out there. So it tends to imply that the GPT-4o mini doesn't exist and replace it with GPT-4o. And that has happened in a lot of my projects. So I've decided to use it as a global rule. You'll notice that I don't have a crazy long global rule right now because I haven't had the need yet to set global rules across multiple projects. I'm still experimenting with that. So far I've been mostly using cursor rules. Now, your global rules can look as follow. You can have different sections. Some people like to use numbering style, but it won't have any effect in terms of prioritization with the LLM. So you don't necessarily need to have like a 1, 2, and 3 and so on. You can just write For example, bug fixes, keep it simple, and code changes. And LLM like organization, so having those different category indentation and then those different points that you want to cover will help the AI to parse through that content and understand that those rules apply to a specific group and a specific category. And that's super helpful. So you can keep it simple, don't have to go overly complicated, and just write with plain English what you want the rules to be about. So in this example, we have bug fixes, analyze the problem truly before suggesting fixes. So as you can see, we don't have something like write clean code because that would be too broad. And broad rules are not good rules. You want to make sure that your rules are specific, to the point, and focuses on behavior that you want the AI to follow within your code base. What are some of the common mistakes that you might see people doing when writing rules? I'm saying cursor rules here, but I also apply to global rules. So some of the most common mistakes are overly general instruction. Just like I said earlier, something that is too broad, like write clean code, make the code fast. You want to be a bit more specific in terms of how you want it to handle performances and other things. If you're not aware with how to do that, I'll show you later in this video some solution that you can use in order to do so. There are some tools out there that can actually help you write the rules for you if you're not a technical person. Then also having lack of specificity is a big problem. You don't want to be too broad. You also want to have enough specificity so that you actually know what's the intent action to take here. You don't want to have excessive complexity, so having like this long, complex paragraph that are not easy to understand and follow. What I would recommend is that if you're writing your rules, make sure to put it into ChatGPT or Cloud and try to have it rewrite it in a way that is understandable for the LLM. One prompt that I like to use is rewrite gist for an LLM so it's easy to read and follow. And finally, you don't want to have conflicting rules, because if you have a rules that say not to do something and later on you have another rules that say to actually do it, it's just going to confuse the AI. It's not going to do what you want, and you're going to complain about having an intended result. So if you want to make sure that you don't have these kind of conflicts, make sure to read all your rules and make sure that there's no conflict in it. Or again, use something like ChatGPT or Cloud and have the LLM double check your rules and making sure that there's no rules that are contradictory that might introduce conflict into that rules logic. Now, what are the best practices? So number one, you want to specify your technology stack. I always like to say what technology stack I'm using. So if I'm using Next.js or, for example, Ruby and so on, you want to specify that. This way, your LLM has a context of what kind of technology you're using. So in my case, in most of my application, I've been using an instruction folder where I have all my technology stack as different instruction, but you can actually do that within the rule itself and then give those the stack to the LLM and let him know what kind of stack you're using in this application. You can also specify your coding standards and style. It's really good for doing that. You can also do naming convention, which is often ignored but extremely important, because if you don't do that, when it's generating the code, you might end up with code that are generated with different naming convention. And if your code doesn't have consistency, then it makes it hard to read. So to make sure that it's easier to read and that it follow like the best practice and naming convention, make sure to specify that inside of your rules. I'll show you in a little bit one of the resources where people have written different rules, and you'll notice that a lot of the pattern that you'll see is that people are specifying how they want the AI to write function sometime and all the naming convention that they have. Then number 4, syntax and formatting. You want to make sure to specify rules related to that because you want to make sure that you format the code as you want per the best practice that you want. What I personally like to do is to follow the best practice of the language that I'm using. So I will first generate the best practices for syntax and formatting for that specific framework or language, and then I will add that as rules inside of my cursor rules. Number 5, you want to make sure that you have rules for UI and styling. So for example, I'm often use Tailwind CSS and Shadcn UI. So I will specify that inside of it. So this way, when I'm asking it to generate different component, I'm not ending up with a component that has a completely different look and style of what I am actually expecting. So adding that inside of your rules help prevent that. Number 6, you want to have key convention. Just this can be your preferences, stuff that you want to make sure that you follow, convention that can be based on the language best practices and other things of the sort. Some of my convention are as follows. For example, I have, if you detect unused code, ask for permission, confirmation before removing it. I have do not remove console log unless explicitly requested. do not remove comment unless explicitly requested. So I have things of the sort to make sure that it follows those convention and doesn't, so that I don't end up with an unintended result that will actually like mess up my code in a way that I don't want it to be. All right, so there are different resources that I found for you guys that you can use if you want to use Cursorrules and you don't know where to get started. So there's a couple of really, really cool resources. The number one tool that I found was Awesome Cursor Resource. So this one right here is a GitHub project that actually covers all the different type of cursor rules that you can use. It's a very extensive, exhaustive list of different rules. You have like Next.js. So just by clicking on it, you'll see some rules that people have written for some of those framework. For example, if I were to type React, I can find all the cursor rules related to React or TypeScript. So I personally use Next.js quite a lot. So I will click here, and then I can see the rules that were written for that specifically. That's one example and one tool that you can use. The other one that I like to use is cursor lists. So cursor lists allow you to actually find different rules. This is a directory, so you can actually go here and, for example, if you wanted to find rules for JavaScript, you can click JavaScript over here and it will filter all of it. Then it'll show you all the rules and you can just copy those rules and use it for your own projects. You can make sure to read them. So for example, this one says code style and structure. You can see that it's following a similar pattern as the one that I mentioned. So there's naming convention, use kebab case for directory, use camel case for variable and function, and so on and so on. So this is super helpful, especially if you're non-technical and you want to make sure to follow some of the best practices that other developers out there have written for people to use. And those are like oftentimes rules that those developers themselves are using for their own projects. So it's super helpful and help you save quite a lot of time. The next one is Cursor.directory. So Cursor.directory is very similar. You have a list of different projects. For example, there's rules for Superbase. You can click here, then look at the rules, see if it's something that is convenient for your own projects, and then copy it and paste it inside of your cursor rules. So as simple as clicking here, going here, and pasting it right there. And you have the rules ready to go. The next one is Cursorrules agents. So this is an agent that I found that actually allow you to write a prompt and have it generate a rule for you. For earlier today, I typed, I am making a Next.js app with Tailwind CSS and Shadcn UI to test it, and it generated all the rules for me. So this is something that you can use if you're not familiar with how to write rules, but you want to have a really quick solution where those rules can be generated for you. And like I said, this is just a prompt, so you can literally just type the kind of rules you want it to write. So I can say, for example, write me rules for a Ruby on Rails project, follow best practices and best convention. And I can just type that, and it's going to do its things, work behind the scene, and generate all the rules for me so that I can use it for my own project. As you can see, it's generating one right now. So I'm getting like, I have it cover the code style and structure, following the best practicing, naming convention, Ruby on Rails usage, say use Ruby 3.x feature when appropriate, so the latest version of Ruby as much as possible, syntax and formatting, and so on, and so on. So yeah, that's pretty good. So this is something that you could use, for example, for your own projects. So again, if you don't know how to write those rules, you can just literally use this, speak with the agent, tell it what you need to do, and it will break down those rules for you and make it simple enough to follow. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this video because in it I explain how I give more context to the AI in order to make sure that it doesn't make unintended mistakes, and so I get the expected outcome most of the time. Thanks you for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.